being mindful of what we do is kind of lacking when it comes to food. And so it's interesting to think that audio, because people aren't being as mindful over kind of where their food comes from, how processed it is, how, we're more mindful of how much it costs and how quick it is to get into us in some way. And so to think that audio could be used as a way of making people more mindful. I guess a good example would be, and maybe you could kind of talk about it from your side, is the jellyfish dish that we worked on together. Because what fascinated me about this was jellyfish really tastes of pretty much nothing, and it depends on how you marinate it. But if you ask people, and I have gone all over the world asking people about this, what's their number one concern of eating, let's say, something like jellyfish? In Far Eastern countries, people eat it regularly-ish. So if we're talking about places like China and Japan and Korea and places like that, something like jellyfish they eat, and they'll say it's crunchy. But when you ask people in the West, they'll say, well, their first kind of association would be that it would be slippery, slimy, and not so pleasant of a texture. And it was that idea of how do we get people to enjoy the texture of something like jellyfish? And this is where you came in.
Yeah, well, and, again, I think one of the things that you do so well is, really help us understand a narrative around food, if you will. That the experiences at your chef's table are storytelling experiences. You take us on a journey that really highlights these rituals of eating. And if you think about ritual from a religious standpoint, a ritual is something that's designed to, bring you to a point where, you are in the moment with something. And I think that's what happens with eating. And to your point, very often we've lost the sense of, what is a ritual. And specifically with, crunchy jellyfish, sound was a really great sensory hack. Because we could play with some of the sounds kind of being this ambient wash, the sound of almost like bubbles that are echoing up, that are creating this, sense of being underwater in the sea, which again is very congruent with the jellyfish. But then we laid over top of that crunching sounds that were almost, kind of keying into this autosensory meridian response, ASMR, where kind of brings about chills in some people. But we had combined sounds. Some of them were literally someone mic'd up and the sounds of them eating something that you could hear the crunch. But then there were other sounds like walking through snow, and kind of that crunch of snow underneath, or crumbling something a little bit. And these were kind of interspersed in somewhat of a rhythm that was designed to be pleasant and relaxing. And so as people were eating the jellyfish, they could taste some of the natural crunch that you had put in there as a chef. But then we played with that texture by combining that texture and that crunch experience in their mouth with what we were putting in their ears. And it really created an entirely different experience for them, where there was nothing, slimy or gelatinous about that experience, even though, if we were to focus on some of that, we probably could have drawn some of those textures out as well. But that's just one example of how we were all working together collaboratively in our areas of expertise in a way that we wanted to create an experience for the people that were enjoying that ritual of eating in that moment.